The stars had always been quiet. For 300 years, humanity watched the sky and wondered if they were alone. They built small ships. They made tiny colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. They thought they were safe. They were wrong. Admiral stood on the bridge of the defense station orbiting Earth. He was 62 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his whole life preparing for something he hoped would never come. The screens around him showed peaceful space. Ships moved slowly between planets. Families lived their normal lives below on the blue planet. Then the alarm started. "Sir," said a young officer named, her voice was shaking. "We have contact, multiple contacts, coming from beyond the outer rim." Walked to her station. His boots made heavy sounds on the metal floor. He looked at the screen and felt his heart stop. The dots on the screen were not a few. They were not even 100. There were thousands of them, moving toward Earth like a wave of death. "How many?" he asked. His voice was calm, but inside he was afraid. "Initial count shows 4,000 ships, sir. They are big, much bigger than anything we have." Closed his eyes for a moment. He had read the old reports. 50 years ago, humanity had found signals from deep space. They were not friendly messages. They were warnings from dying civilizations. An empire called the was coming. They moved from star to star, taking everything. Planets, resources, people. Nothing survived their hunger. The governments of Earth had kept this secret. They told no one. The people lived in peace, not knowing that death was coming, had always thought they would have more time. "Send a message to all colonies," he said. "Tell them to prepare for evacuation." "Sir, there is no time. The fleet will reach Mars in 6 hours, Earth in 12. Felt cold. 12 hours. That was all humanity had left. The communications officer, a young man named, turned around. His face was white with fear. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the incoming fleet. They want to talk." "Put it through." The main screen changed. Saw something that would stay in his nightmares forever. There were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were black and empty like the void of space. The one on the screen wore golden armor and had scars across its face. "Humans of Earth," the creature said. Its voice was deep and cold. "We are the Dominion. Your worlds now belong to us. Do not resist. Resistance will bring only pain. Submit, and some of you may live as servants. Fight, and you will all die." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent, could hear the breathing of his crew. He could see the fear in their eyes. Some of them were crying silently, others were praying. "Sir, what do we do?" asked. Looked at the screen showing the approaching fleet. Earth had only 200 defense ships. They were small and old. Against 4,000 warships, they would last maybe 10 minutes. "Contact all Earth governments," he said. "Tell them what is happening. Begin evacuation of major cities. Move people underground." "Underground, sir? Why?" "Because on the surface, they will die faster." The next few hours were chaos. News spread across Earth. People screamed and ran. Some tried to leave the planet, but there were not enough ships. Traffic filled every road. Families cried and held each other. Churches and temples filled with people looking for hope. Watched it all from the station. He felt helpless. He had dedicated his life to protecting these people, and now he could do nothing. "Admiral," said quietly, "the fleet has reached Mars." On the screen, watched the red planet. Mars had 3 small defense stations and 50,000 colonists. The ships surrounded them like wolves around sheep. The battle lasted 8 minutes. The defense stations fired everything they had. Missiles and lasers hit the ships. Some of them took damage. A few even exploded, but there were too many. The returned fire with weapons that burned through metal like it was paper. The stations broke apart. The colony domes cracked. Air rushed out into space. 50,000 humans died in 8 minutes. Said nothing. His hands were shaking, but his face showed no emotion. He could not show weakness now. His crew needed him to be strong. "They are continuing toward Earth," reported. Her voice was empty now. The fear had become numbness. Nodded, he looked at the communications panel and took a deep breath. There was one thing left to do, one message he had been told to send only when all hope was lost. He walked to a special terminal at the back of the bridge. It had a red cover over the controls. He lifted the cover and entered a code that only 12 people on Earth knew. The screen lit up with a single word: ready. "Admiral, what is that?" asked. "Press the button." Deep beneath the oceans of Earth, something began to wake up. In bases hidden under every continent, lights turned on for the first time in 100 years. Machines that had been sleeping started to hum with power. The message was simple, sent to secret places that did not exist on any map. "Shadowgate protocol activated. The time has come." Looked at his confused crew. "There is something you do not know," he said slowly. "Something almost no one knows. Earth is not as weak as we appear." Before he could explain, the first ships appeared in orbit around the moon. They were massive, each one the size of a city. Their weapons charged, ready to end humanity forever. The Admiral looked at them without fear for the first time that day. "Let them come," he whispered. "Let them see what happens when you threaten our home." On Earth, deep under the Pacific Ocean, a door that had been sealed for 3 centuries began to open. Commander had never believed in secrets. She was a practical woman who liked facts and truth. For 20 years, she served in the Earth Defense Force, thinking she knew everything about humanity's military. She commanded a small cruiser that protected shipping lanes between Earth and Jupiter. She was wrong about knowing everything. When the alarm reached her ship, she was eating dinner with her crew. The message from Admiral was short and terrifying. An alien fleet was coming. Mars was gone. Earth would be next. Then came a second message, sent only to her. It used a code she had never seen before. When she decoded it, she found only coordinates and 3 words: "Come home now." Did not understand, but she followed orders. Her ship turned toward Earth and pushed its engines to maximum. Around her, other ships were doing the same. The whole fleet was coming home to die fighting. But the coordinates in her message did not point to the orbital station. They pointed to the middle of the Pacific Ocean. "Commander, are you sure about this?" asked her pilot, a young man named. "There is nothing at those coordinates, just water." "I am sure," she said, though she was not sure at all. Her ship entered Earth's atmosphere and flew over the vast blue ocean. The sun was setting, painting the water orange and red. It would have been beautiful if not for the fear that filled every heart. "We are at the coordinates," said. "There is nothing here." Looked at the ocean below. Empty waves, nothing more. She was about to call Admiral when her radio crackled with a new voice. "Earth Defense Cruiser, this is Shadow Base. Please confirm identity code." Froze. Shadow Base. She had never heard of any such place, but she gave her code anyway. There was a pause, then the voice spoke again. "Identity confirmed. Welcome, Commander. Please descend to the following depth." Numbers appeared on her screen. Eyes went wide. "That is 2 kilometers underwater. We cannot go that deep." Before could respond, the ocean below them began to change. The water moved in a giant circle, and then it parted. It simply opened like a great mouth, revealing a tunnel that led straight down into darkness. "What is this?" whispered. Did not answer. She took the controls herself and flew her ship into the tunnel. The walls were made of some material that held back the ocean. Blue lights lined the path downward. They flew for what felt like forever, going deeper and deeper beneath the sea. Then they emerged into a cavern so large that could not see the other side. Her breath stopped. Ships, thousands of ships. They hung in the air, held by massive docking clamps attached to the cavern ceiling. But these were not like any ships had ever seen. They were huge, sleek, and covered in strange markings. Their hulls were black as night, and something about them felt powerful, dangerous. "Land on Platform 7, said the voice on the radio. Landed her cruiser on a platform where several people in black uniforms waited. As she stepped out, an older woman approached her. The woman had short gray hair and a face that showed years of hard decisions. "Commander, I am Director. Welcome to Shadow Base. I know you have many questions." "What is this place?" asked. "What are those ships? Why did no one tell us about this?" Director smiled sadly. "Because the secret had to stay hidden. If anyone knew, our enemies might have learned. Come with me. I will explain everything." They walked through the base while Director talked. Around them, thousands of people worked at computers and machines. Recognized some of them: famous scientists who had supposedly died years ago, military leaders who had retired to quiet lives. They had all been here, working in secret. 300 years ago, began, humanity received signals from space. They were messages from civilizations that had been destroyed by the. These messages contained warnings, but they also contained gifts. They stopped in front of a window that looked out at the fleet of black ships. Technology, weapons, designs for ships that could match the. These dying species gave us everything they had, hoping that someone might survive where they failed. Stared at the ships. "You built all of this in secret." "It took generations. Every government agreed to hide it. We knew that would come eventually. If they saw us building a real fleet, they might have attacked sooner before we were ready. So we pretended to be weak. We built small, useless ships for everyone to see. And down here in places like this hidden under every ocean, we built our true fleet." "How many ships?" 10,000 warships. Each one is 20 times more powerful than the cruiser you command. And that is not all. Director led to another room. In the center was a hologram of Earth. Blue dots covered the planet, hundreds of them, under every ocean, under every continent. Shadow bases, 47 of them around the world. Each one holds part of the fleet, plus ground weapons, energy shields, and soldiers trained to fight in ways they have never seen. Felt dizzy. Her whole life she had thought humanity was weak. She had accepted that they could not fight against the monsters of the galaxy. But all along, hidden beneath her feet, was an army waiting to wake up. "Why tell me now?" she asked. "Because we need commanders, people who know how to fight, who can lead these ships into battle. Admiral has activated the Shadow Gate Protocol. In 3 hours, these ships will rise to the surface and face the." Looked at the fleet again. Her heart was beating fast now, not with fear but with something else: hope. "I thought we were going to die today," she said. Director put a hand on her shoulder. "Many might still die. This battle will not be easy. They are strong and they have destroyed countless worlds. But today, for the first time, they will face an enemy that is truly ready for them." Alarms began to sound throughout the base. Red lights flashed on the walls. "They are entering Earth orbit," said a voice on the speakers. "All ships prepare for launch." Straightened her back. She had been a commander of a small cruiser. Now she would command a warship the likes of which the galaxy had never seen. "Which ship is mine?" she asked. Director smiled. "The Midnight Sun. She is our fastest battleship. 1,000 crew members are already on board, waiting for their commander." As walked toward her new ship, she passed hundreds of other officers and soldiers. They all had the same look in their eyes. They had waited their whole lives for this moment. Their parents had waited. Their grandparents had waited. 300 years of patience. 300 years of hiding. 300 years of building. Today, the waiting would finally end. Above them, the ocean ceiling began to open, revealing the dark sky and the stars beyond. Somewhere up there, the fleet was approaching, thinking Earth was helpless. They had no idea what was about to happen. Captain Minu had been waiting for this day since he was a child. His grandfather had told him stories about a great secret that his family had protected for generations. "One day," his grandfather had said, "you will open the gate, and when you do, everything will change." Minyu had thought they were just stories, old tales that grandfathers told there. But when he grew up and joined the military, he was taken to a place that did not exist on any map. He learned that the stories were true. Now he stood in the heart of Shadow Base Alpha, the largest and oldest of all the hidden facilities. Before him was a machine the size of a small building. It was made of metal that seemed to glow with inner light. Symbols covered its surface, symbols that came from civilizations that had died long before humans learned to make fire. This was the Shadow Gate. "All systems are ready, Captain," said his second officer, a woman named. She stood at a control panel, her fingers moving across buttons and switches. Minyu nodded. Through the speakers, he could hear Admiral's voice giving orders to the visible fleet above Earth. Those 200 small ships were moving to face the. They would not last long, but they did not need to. They just needed to buy time. "The fleet is taking position around Earth," reported. "They are targeting major cities. Their weapons are charging." "How long until they fire?" 15 minutes. Minyu looked at the Shadow Gate. For 300 years it had slept. The technology that powered it came from 7 different civilizations, all destroyed by the. Each one had sent what they could to Earth before they died. A piece of a shield here, a weapon designed there, an engine that could bend space. Humanity had taken all these gifts and built something new. Something that had never faced before. "Begin the activation sequence," Minyu said. Entered the codes. The Shadow Gate began to hum. The symbols on its surface glowed brighter. Around the base, lights flickered as massive amounts of energy flowed into the ancient machine. In 47 bases around the world, similar scenes were happening. Captains and commanders stood at their stations, watching their own gates come to life. Ships that had waited in darkness for 100 years began to wake. Engines powered up, weapons charged, crews ran to their positions. Commander was on the bridge of the Midnight Sun. Through the ship's cameras, she could see the ocean ceiling opening above them. Stars appeared, and beyond the stars, the shapes of warships. "All systems are ready," reported her pilot, an eager young man named. "Weapons armed, shields at full power." "Good, we launch in 2 minutes." On Earth's surface, people looked up at the sky with fear. The ships were visible now, dark shapes blocking out the stars. Some people ran. Others held their families close and waited for death. But in the oceans, something was happening. The water began to glow. All around the planet, in every ocean and sea, blue light appeared beneath the waves. At first, people thought it was a trick of light, or maybe some kind of natural event. Then the first ships began to rise. They came out of the Pacific Ocean like giants waking from sleep. Black hulls broke the surface, pushing aside waves that were taller than buildings. Water fell from their sides like waterfalls. They rose higher and higher until they hung in the air above the ocean, impossible and magnificent. Then more ships appeared. From the Atlantic, from the Indian Ocean, from the Arctic and Antarctic, from every body of water on Earth, the hidden fleet emerged. People on beaches stopped running. People in cities stopped screaming. Everyone just stared. A little girl in Japan pointed at the sky and laughed. "Look, Mama, angels." Her mother said nothing. She was crying, but not from fear anymore. In space, the commander watched his screens with growing confusion. He had studied Earth for years. He knew every ship they had. 200 small cruisers, weak weapons, no real shields, an easy conquest. But now his screens were filling with new signals. Ships were appearing everywhere. Big ships. His sensors could not even measure their power. "What is this?" he demanded. "Where did these ships come from?" No one could answer him. Captain Minyu watched the Shadow Gate reach full power. The machine was now glowing so bright that he had to look away. Energy crackled along its surface like lightning. "Gate is stable," reported. "All bases report ready. The fleet is in position." Minyu took a deep breath. This was the moment his family had protected for generations, the moment all of humanity had waited for without knowing. Open the shadow gate. He pulled the lever. The effect was immediate. The shadow gate released a wave of energy that spread across Earth in seconds. It passed through rock and water like they were nothing. When it touched the hidden ships, they responded. Every ship in the fleet activated its special drive at the same moment. Space itself seemed to bend. And then, in a flash of blue light, all 10,000 ships appeared in orbit around Earth. The fleet was surrounded. Admiral watched from his station as the hidden fleet materialized. He had known about the secret his whole life. He had helped plan this moment, but seeing it happen was something else entirely. "Sir," said, her voice shaking with emotion, "the fleet is in position. All 10,000 ships reporting ready." "What about the—" "They have stopped moving. Their weapons are still charged, but they are not firing." Almost smiled. They were confused. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they did not know what to do. Commander's voice came through the speakers. "Admiral, this is the Midnight Sun. We are in position, awaiting orders." "All ships hold position," said. "Let them see us. Let them understand what they are facing." Across the fleet, crews looked out at the ships. These monsters had destroyed Mars. They had killed 50,000 innocent people. They had come to do the same to Earth. But Earth was not going to die today. Captain Minu left the Shadowgate chamber and made his way to his own ship, the Dawn Breaker. As he walked through the corridors, he passed soldiers and crew members who had trained their whole lives for this battle. Some were young, barely adults. Others were old veterans who had kept the secret for decades. They all had the same fire in their eyes. "Captain on the bridge," announced a voice as Minu entered his command center. He took his seat and looked at the main screen. The fleet hung in space, 4,000 ships strong. They were still the larger force. They had better numbers. But humanity had something better than numbers. They had patience. They had sacrifice. They had 300 years of preparation. And they had anger. Minu thought of Mars. 50,000 people, gone in minutes. Children, families, entire communities wiped out because they wanted what was not theirs. "All ships," Admiral's voice echoed across the fleet. "This is the moment we have waited for. Generations of our ancestors worked and sacrificed so we could be here today. Do not let them down. Do not let Earth down." The commander finally found his voice. His transmission appeared on every human screen. "This changes nothing. You are still fewer in number. We will destroy you." Opened a channel to respond. His voice was calm, cold, and certain. "You destroyed Mars. You killed our people. You came to our home thinking we were weak. You were wrong. Now you will pay for every life you took." He paused, then gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. "All ships attack." They had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had crushed empires that spanned hundreds of star systems. They had never known defeat. Today, they would learn what it tasted like. Lieutenant sat at her weapons console on the Midnight Sun. She was 24 years old, born in one of the secret bases, trained since childhood to fight an enemy she had never seen. Now that enemy filled her screen. "Weapons locked on target," she reported. "Ready to fire on your command, Commander." Stood in the center of the bridge, watching the battle unfold on the main screen. Around her, the crew worked with calm focus. They had practiced this 1,000 times. Now it was real. "All batteries fire." The Midnight Sun erupted with light. Beams of energy shot from its weapons, crossing the darkness of space in an instant. They hit the nearest warship and tore through its shields like they were made of paper. Watched her screens with wide eyes. Direct hit, enemy ship destroyed. One shot, that was all it took. Across the battle, the same scene repeated. Human ships fired and ships died. The weapons that humanity had built in secret were beyond anything they had ever faced. They were a combination of technologies from 7 dead civilizations, improved and perfected over 3 centuries. They did not know how to fight this. "They are returning fire," reported from the pilot's seat. "Multiple missiles incoming. Activate defensive grid." A shield of blue light appeared around the midnight sun. The missiles hit it and exploded harmlessly. The shield did not even flicker. On the dawn breaker, Captain Minu watched the battle with a strange calm. He had imagined this moment for so long that living it felt almost like a dream. "Captain, enemy ships are trying to regroup," said. "They are forming a defensive line. Do not let them. All ships in our squadron break their formation. Show them no mercy." The Dawnbreaker led 20 ships in a charge toward the line. They moved faster than any ship they had ever seen. Their engines were based on technology from a species called a people who had been artists and dreamers before they killed them all. Now their dreams powered weapons of war. The commander watched his fleet fall apart. Ships that had conquered worlds were exploding like toys. His screens were filled with distress calls and death reports. He could not believe what he was seeing. "This is impossible," he said. "They were supposed to be primitives. They were supposed to be weak." His second officer looked at him with fear in her eyes. "Commander, we should retreat. We cannot win this fight." "Retreat, do not retreat." But even as he said the words, another of his ships exploded, then another, and another. On Earth, people watched the battle through telescopes and cameras. They saw flashes of light in the sky as ships fought and died. At first, they did not know who was winning. The fear was still strong. Then the news came. Human voices on all channels, crying and laughing at the same time. "We are winning. We are actually winning." In Tokyo, a crowd gathered in the streets. They watched giant screens that showed the battle. Every time a ship exploded, they cheered. Strangers hugged each other. Old enemies became friends. In New York, a woman fell to her knees and prayed. She had thought her children would die today. Now they had a chance to live. In small villages and great cities, on every continent, humanity watched its salvation unfold. Admiral commanded the battle from his station. He moved fleets like pieces on a board, finding weak points in the formation and striking them with overwhelming force. "Enemy fleet is down to 2,000 ships," reported. Her voice had changed. The fear was gone, replaced by something fierce. "They are trying to flee toward the moon. Do not let them escape. Any ship that leaves will tell others about us. The element of surprise must be protected." "Yes, sir." Lieutenant fired again and again. Her hands moved across the controls without thinking. Every shot found its target. She had trained for years to do this, and now her training was paying off. But then something changed. "Commander," said the sensor officer, "enemy flagship is moving toward us. It is charging some kind of weapon." Looked at the screen. The flagship was 3 times larger than any other ship. It had been hanging back during the battle, watching. Now it was coming straight at the midnight sun. "What kind of weapon?" "Unknown. Power readings are off the charts." The commander had made a decision. If he was going to die, he would take as many humans with him as possible. The flagship's main weapon was called the Star Eater. It had destroyed moons. It had cracked planets. He aimed it at the midnight sun. "All ships concentrate fire on the flagship," ordered Admiral, but the flagship was heavily shielded. The weapons that destroyed other ships only scratched its surface. Commander said, "The weapon is almost fully charged. 30 seconds. Did not hesitate. Take us straight at them." "Straight at them. Commander, that weapon will." "Trust me, maximum speed now." The midnight sun shot forward like an arrow. Other human ships tried to follow, but it was too fast. It crossed the space between the fleets in seconds, heading directly for the flagship's main gun. "What is she doing?" demanded the commander. "Is she mad?" The Star Eater fired. A beam of pure white energy shot toward the midnight sun. It was wide enough to swallow a city, hot enough to melt metal in an instant, but had one more secret. Activate phase drive. The midnight sun flickered and became transparent. The Star-Eater beam passed right through it, hitting nothing but empty space. The ship had become a ghost. Phase technology, whispered. I did not know we had this. There are many things we have that no one knows about, said with a small smile. The midnight sun returned to solid form directly in front of the flagship. Before the could react, gave her final order. All weapons point-blank range, fire everything. The explosion lit up the sky above Earth. The flagship broke into 1,000,000 pieces. Its commander died without ever understanding how his great empire had been defeated by a species he thought was nothing. Admiral watched the flagship die. Around him his crew was cheering. Tears ran down faces. Hands were raised in victory. But the battle was not over yet. Remaining ships are surrendering, reported. They are powering down weapons and raising communication signals. How many are left? 412 ships. From 4,000 to 400. In less than 1 hour, humanity had destroyed 90% of the invasion fleet. Commander's voice came through the speakers. Admiral, what are your orders regarding the surrendering ships? Thought about Mars, about the 50,000 people who had died begging for mercy. They had given them none. But humanity was not the. Accept their surrender, take them prisoner. They will face justice, but we are not murderers. Across the fleet, human soldiers boarded ships. The tall, gray aliens looked at them with fear in their black eyes. They had never been captured before. They did not know what to expect. They expected torture. They expected death. Instead, the humans gave them food and water and treated their wounds. They did not understand, but maybe in time they would. Below on Earth, the sun was rising. A new day was beginning. And for the first time in 300 years, humanity faced that new day without fear. The battle was won, but the war was just beginning. 1 week had passed since the battle for Earth. Admiral stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dawn, the largest and most powerful ship in the human fleet. Through the windows, he could see thousands of stars stretching into infinity. Behind him, Earth was now just a small blue dot in the distance. The fleet was moving, not running, not hiding, hunting. Admiral said, who had become his permanent aide, "We are receiving a transmission from command. They want to negotiate." Put it through. The screen showed a leader, older than the commander who had died at Earth. This one wore white robes instead of golden armor. Its face showed something had never seen on it before. Fear. Humans of Earth, they said, we wish to discuss peace. The attack on your world was a mistake. We are willing to return all territory and offer compensation for. No. The word was simple, but it carried the weight of 300 years of preparation. The leader blinked in confusion. I do not understand. We are offering you peace. We are offering you everything you could want. What more do you need? Leaned forward in his chair. Let me tell you a story. 300 years ago, civilizations across this galaxy sent messages to Earth. They were dying. They were killing them. They had no hope left for themselves, but they had hope for us. They sent us their technology, their knowledge, their dreams. They asked us to survive where they could not. He paused, letting the words sink in. We did more than survive. We grew. We learned. We became something greater than any of them could have imagined, and we made a promise to their memory that would pay for what they did, not just to us, to everyone. The leader's fear grew deeper. You cannot be serious. Our empire spans 100 star systems. We have billions of soldiers. You have one fleet. Wrong, we have one fleet that you know about. On signal, opened a channel to all human ships. Across the galaxy, hidden bases that humanity had built in secret began to reveal themselves. Not just on Earth, but on moons and asteroids that they had never bothered to check. Places that seemed empty were actually full of ships and weapons. The leader watched his sensors light up with new contacts, thousands of them, then tens of thousands. Humanity had not just been preparing to defend Earth, they had been preparing to end the forever. "How is this possible?" they whispered. Commander stood on the bridge of the Midnight Sun, which had become famous across the fleet for destroying the flagship. Lieutenant was still at her weapons console, ready for whatever came next. Commander said, "The Admiral is giving the order. We are to advance on the home system." Nodded, she had expected this. After what they had done to Mars, after what they had done to countless other worlds, there could be no peace, not until the threat was ended forever. All ships follow the Admiral's lead. The fleet moved like a wave across the stars. Defense stations fell in minutes. Their patrol ships fled or were destroyed. World after world that they had conquered watched in amazement as human ships appeared in their skies. But the humans did not come as new conquerors. They came as liberators. On a planet called which they had ruled for 200 years, the local population watched the battle from their homes. They were small beings with blue skin and large eyes. Once, they had been artists and musicians. They had made them slaves. When the battle ended, a human shuttle landed in their capital city. Captain Menu stepped out and looked at the crowd that had gathered. "People of," he said through a translator, "they no longer control this world. You are free." They did not understand at first. Freedom was something they had forgotten. But then one of them, an old female with faded blue skin, walked forward. She touched Menu's hand with her small fingers. "Who are you?" she asked. "We are from Earth. We are human." "Why did you come? Why did you fight for us?" Menu thought about the question. The answer was complicated. It was about revenge for Mars. It was about protecting Earth from future attacks, but it was also about something more. "Because," he said finally, "no one should have to live in fear." The old began to cry. Others joined her. Soon the whole crowd was crying but also smiling. For the first time in generations, they had hope. Back on the Eternal Dawn, Admiral watched the reports come in. World after world was being freed. The Empire was crumbling faster than anyone had predicted. But the final battle was still ahead. The home world was a dark planet called. It was heavily defended, with hundreds of weapons platforms and a fleet of 1,000 ships. They had gathered everything they had left for a final stand. Admiral said, "Enemy fleet is in defensive formation around. They are not attacking. They seem to be waiting. They know they cannot win in open battle. They hope their defenses will be enough." Will they be? Looked at the screen. They had caused so much pain, so much death. Countless species had been erased from existence because of them. Earth had almost joined that list. "No," he said, "they will not be enough." He opened a channel to all human ships. His voice echoed across the fleet, heard by millions of soldiers who had waited their whole lives for this moment. "This is Admiral. 300 years ago, dying civilizations sent us a gift. They gave us their knowledge, their technology, and their final hope. They asked us to do what they could not. Today, we honor their sacrifice. Today, we end the threat forever, not with anger but with justice, not with hatred but with duty, for Earth, for Mars, for every world that suffered under rule. Attack." The human fleet moved as one. The battle was the longest and hardest of the war. They fought with the desperation of a dying empire. Their weapons hit human shields and sometimes broke through. Ships were damaged. Lives were lost. But the outcome was never in doubt. Commander led her squadron against the largest weapons platform. Lieutenant fired shot after shot, her face set with determination. The platform fell, taking a dozen ships with it. Captain Menu broke through the defensive line and led a strike against the military headquarters. His ship took heavy damage, but he did not retreat. The headquarters fell in flames. An admiral, watching from the Eternal Dawn, coordinated it all. Every move, every attack, Every sacrifice was part of a plan 3 centuries in the making. Finally, the leader appeared on screen again. His white robes were torn. Behind him, fires burned and alarms wailed. "We surrender," he said. "Please, no more death, we surrender." Looked at him for a long moment. He thought about saying something grand, something that would be remembered in history books. But in the end, he only said 2 words. Surrender accepted. The war was over. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed in ways no one could have imagined. The Empire was dismantled. Their leaders faced trial for their crimes. Species that had been slaves for centuries were given their freedom and helped to rebuild their worlds. And humanity took its place among the stars, not as conquerors but as protectors. The hidden fleet that had saved Earth now watched over 100 worlds, making sure that no one would ever suffer as these victims had suffered. On Earth, the secret was no longer secret. Everyone knew about the Shadow Gate, the hidden bases, the generations of sacrifice that had made victory possible. Children learned about the heroes who had waited in darkness so that others could live in light. Admiral retired to a small house by the ocean in Korea. Every morning, he walked on the beach and watched the waves. Sometimes he thought about the past, about all the people who had given everything for this moment. Sometimes he just enjoyed the peace. Commander became an admiral herself, leading the fleet that protected the new alliance of free worlds. Lieutenant rose to become her second in command. Together, they made sure that the galaxy would never forget what humanity had done, or why. And Captain Minyu returned to the Shadow Gate. The great machine had gone quiet after the battle, its purpose fulfilled. But Minyu knew that someday it might be needed again. He stayed to watch over it, just as his family had done for generations. On the anniversary of the battle for Earth, people gathered in cities around the world. They lit candles and told stories about the heroes who had saved them. They remembered Mars and the 50,000 who had died. They celebrated the victory that had seemed impossible. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the spirits of the 7 civilizations who had sent their final gifts to Earth watched with pride. Their children had grown up. Their dreams had been fulfilled. Humanity was no longer hiding. The shadow had become the light. And the galaxy would never underestimate Earth again.